Hello everyone, and welcome back to this tutorial about Apigee. And as we talked about in our first introduction session, that today we will be kicking off this Apigee tutorial by creating a very simple reverse proxy in Apigee. So let's get started. So once you are logged in and you are in this portal where Apigee provides a lot of tooling which you can use and lot of functionalities. So we will be starting by creating a very simple API proxy for an existing API which you already might have. So the use case for this could be that you might have a application which is already running and maybe exposing an API, but it might not have all the features like security or API throttling or quotas and all those things. So you can create a API proxy which works like a reverse proxy. So your user or consumer will call that proxy, and then that proxy will in turn call your API which is existing on your backend system or somewhere. So let's get started. So for to do this, what you have to do, you have to go to this develop section here, and in develop just click on API proxies. So this one. So I'm gonna click API proxy, and it's going to ask me to log in. So my session expired, sorry about that. Okay, so now we are back here, and here you can choose an environment where you want to create. So I'm going to select test, and in test I'm going to create API proxy. So let's click on this plus proxy button. I'm going to So here you can see bunch of different kind of proxies which you can create, like a reverse proxy or hosted target or SOAP service. Or so today we are going to do a reverse proxy as we talked, and you can also use a open API spec or just click here. So let's name it. What shall we name it? Let's call it my proxy, and let me type that. I'm gonna call it my proxy, and it's going to check name, and this name it's checking within your environment. If it is already existing name, then it will not allow you, because this is the base path it's going to select. You can of course change this base path also. And for the target, we need a target, and this target could be an already existing API which is there. So I'm going to use a API which is already existing, which basically does a factorial of any number when you call it. So I'm going to give that name here, and then on the next page you can select various things like you can put a API key or OAuth for security. Right now I'm just going to make it pass through with no authorization, and just click on this add course header. So it basically, this is cross origin. You're allowing to get it called from various like it should not be originated from the call to the API, should not origin from the same owner or the same caller, like where it is deployed. So so let's click next, and then it's showing you what kind of where it is going to deploy. So I'm going to select this default also to make the host deployment for this, and here you can see the name of the destination where it is going to deploy this or create this reverse proxy, and then in turn it's going to call the API which we already have. So let's click next, and now you have to select which environment you want to deploy. I'm going to select test, and I'm going to deploy it on my test environment, and then let's create and deploy. So now we wait a while till it is done. It will take some time to create your proxy and deploy it. Now it is deployment is done. So we can go to edit proxy and see various kind of information what is available for that. So it, I go to edit proxy, and here you can see different kind of information what is there. So you click on this plus button, you can see there it deployed two versions of your reverse proxy, one on HTTP and one on HTTPS. So by default, out of the box, it's creating an HTTPS version of your API also. So this was this simple. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it using Postman. um, so let's go here, let's select this HTTP version. Oops, if I can copy it properly. Yeah, I'm just gonna copy it, paste it here. So, and the API which is exposed is factorial, and then you pass any number and it will give you the factorial of that number, and then you send. So here is the response. So I sent input as 12 and it calculated the factorial and it gives back. So as simple as that. So the reverse proxy, or the proxy which we deployed, is basically not doing anything right now. What it is doing, it's just taking your call and sending it to the end destination. That's it. So now let's do few more things, because this is not exciting at all. You could have basically exposed your existing API, and then your user could have called it by from there also. So why we created this API is because we want to create some more like different kind of policies we want to create on this reverse proxy, which we could not do on our final end API. So now let's click on this develop button link here. So this develop, once you click, it will open up a console or a editor where you can do a lot of things on your API, like creating or attaching your various kind of options for your proxy, like pre-flow, post-flow, and all this kind of information you can do. So what we are going to do now is, so let me first explain you what are these various sections here. So this basically is a navigator panel which is on the left, and then there is a designer view at the top. This is the view, designer view, and then you have a code view underneath. This is where your code is shown up for various kind of policies or something which you add, like extensions or something. In future we will add few extensions also. So all this code is shown up here, and then on the right hand side you have a property inspector where you can see all the properties related to whatever option you have selected. So this is what it is. And now what we are going to do, we are going to go to proxy endpoint, and in proxy endpoint we are going to select pre-flow, which is by default selected. So we select this pre-flow, and then we click on this plus step. So this opens up various kind of out of the box policies, or in like security or something which you can add, which is available out of the box. And you can also create some extensions also, and like if something which is not satisfactory to your need, you can create your own, and you can attach that also. We will see that also in future. So first what we are going to do, we are going to add a spike arrest. What spike arrest basically does is, it will make it like how many times somebody can call, or that kind of if there's too much spike happening, then it will safeguard your API against it. So I'm just going to leave this name as default, and then going to hit add. So here you can see based on like if, because it is already selected, at the bottom part you are seeing the code for this spike arrest. So now here you can see it's the name. You can of course change the name, and then the properties, and how, what is the rate. So right now it's like 30 calls per second. So you can change it to one or two calls per second, so that if there's not too much spike, if somebody is calling it more than 2 second calls per second, it will just block it and not allow them to call. So that is what spike arrest does. So we are adding some policies on our reverse proxy which we could not do on our AND API. So this is where Apigee excels and shows that you can do many things here. And next, let's add some more policies which we can do. So what I'm going to add is um, after like right now it's not authenticated, as shown you. Like we can just go very simply to our postman and keep calling there's no authentication right now happening. So let's add one API key verification policy. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to find API key, verify API key. So I add this. So now it's going to verify if there is a key or not. So there should be a request parameter API key, and that key has to be provided, otherwise it's not going to allow me to call. So and then I'm going to add a quota policy, so that if whichever API like API key is assigned to any caller or app, that application, if it's calling with the API key, I'm going to verify that if the quota is crossing for that caller, then I'm going to block it or stop it from calling. So let's go again here, and we are going to select this quota, and we will just add this quota here. And now I have a code already written. I will show you what that code basically does. So here is the quota. This is the out of the box code which comes. I'm just going to replace this with this. So let me explain what it does. So basically it's taking that API key and then verifying whether the API interval, or it's like within 1 month, how many times it's going to call. And so it's checking that information for that product developer quota. And then we will set this up also in a I will show you how to set this up quota for a developer app. So with this we are able to create this, and if I try to call this, it's gonna fail. So basically now, because here I am going to get that API key, but we are not passing it as of now. So what we are going to do is we are going to go back to our pre-flow. What we are going to do, we are going to add modify this add calls, because we want to accept a API key. So I'm going to modify this and say API key, so that it allows all these headers to come in to my call, because I need this key to be provided by the users or the caller of this API. And then also what we are going to do is we are going to go to this target endpoints pre-flow, and here is this add course, and this API key is added. Good. Okay, so now we can just go and save this. Let's save it. It's going to submit this version and save it into that. If I go back and try to call it, let's see what happens. So now I'm getting that fail to resolve API key. So as you saw, I was able to call it before, but now since I have implemented API key verification, and that proxy is rejecting my call because I don't have an API key associated with this. Now how to get that API key? So we need to create a API product here. So what we are going to do is we are going to go back to this publish, and we are going to create a API product. So it's taking some time to open. So now let's do one thing. Let's click on API product and let's add a new product. So let's call it my API product, and let's put my API product. Let's display name, and then I'm going to select test environment, and then I'm going to make it publicly accessible, and I'm going to put a quota, like how many times I want to make it, anybody let it call, like 5 times every 1 minute. And then I have to add a proxy. So this proxy is the one which we created. This is my proxy. Let's select this and add here. So now it's going to show that you are going to proxy that the product is associated with that proxy, and then let's click save. Now we have a product ready. Now once the product is ready, what we are going to do is create an app, because this app will be called by that product. Or this app is going to be associated with that product, and then from there it's going to get a API key. So let's create one app. Let me call it my app, and then let it go be developer. And by default, Apigee provides you as a hello world apigee.com developer account. You can use that. And then we have to add a product. As we created this my API product, I will add that. So what it is basically, so as in first tutorial we talked, we can create different products. I could have a basic tier or public tier, so my app could be associated with different tiers. So that is what this product represents here. And now let's click on create. Now here you see it created a credential, so I'm just going to click on there, and this is my key. And if I use this key to call my API, now I should be able to call it. So I'm going to add API key and then put that key here, and let's call it now. So it's going to authenticate that key, and it's able to call it now. So that was that simple to get that API key working, and you have an authentication here. So let's go back and see what exactly our API proxy did. I'm going to go back to this proxy and go back to develop. So once again, I'm going to show this thing here. So we went to verify API key from API product, and then check that quota and the limit, and if it is calling more than once, like quota will be implemented. So let's try to call it multiple times very quickly and see what happens. I'm it's taking some time. So you can have, like, you get the idea. You can have a load balancer or something from where you can try to call it quickly, and then see your quota will be implemented, and it will not allow it to call multiple times if the quota is exhausted. So this was that was it. If it takes it's took us about like maybe 10 minutes to create a API with a security and with a quota associated, and we didn't even have to touch our end API which was there. So in next tutorial, we will see how to create a stack driver logging extension, so that we can get some logging done to on this API in our GCP Google Cloud stack driver. See you in the next tutorial. Thank you so much.